I'm going to show you two different retirement probabilities on the screen here in a second. I want you to take a guess at the difference between the two. The first retirement probability here of 9%, and the second retirement probability here showing a 58% probability of success. What do you think is the main difference between those two? If you guess that the answer is that they had more appropriate or set the right retirement date, then you'd be guessing correct. And what I want to show here is that simply by selecting the appropriate well-calculated retirement date, this person was able to increase their retirement success by 49%. Now, the important thing here is to understand that there are many things you can do to improve your retirement probability, and we talk about those things in many of the videos on my channel. But for today's video, we're just going to focus on how important it is from a probability perspective to choose the right retirement date and how catastrophic the effects of choosing the wrong retirement date can be. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right in. So in a couple seconds here, I'm going to show a couple slides on the screen that can illustrate this from a mathematical perspective. But at a theoretical level, let's just talk through a few of the components. Obviously, if you retire earlier, let's say the proper retirement date is 65 for you, and then you decide to retire at 62, unknowing or not knowing how that would affect your retirement probability, what you're really doing is you're extending the length of your retirement and therefore requiring that your retirement assets or your portfolio can support more years of life. Therefore leads to you need a larger portfolio overall. A simple way to illustrate this, and we'll pop this up on the screen here, is that if you needed $20,000 per year in order to live in retirement, we'll make this very simple. Forget inflation. We're not running sophisticated retirement probabilities or retirement calculators right now. We'll just use math to illustrate this. If you need $20,000 per year, if you were going to retire at 65 and estimate an end of life age of 95, you'd have a 30-year retirement, which means if you just needed that flat level $20,000 payment, you'd need $600,000. Now, if you retire 5 years earlier and you haven't done any calculations, you don't know if it's possible, and all you do is just say, I'm going to retire at 60. Well, now you need 5 additional years of $20,000 of payments. That makes it so that you require a $700,000 total pool of cash at the day you retire. This is a 16% increase in the total amount you'll have to pay yourself over your life. And the question is, can you support that? And it's easy to put this on the screen and show, just so you understand. Proportionally, 16% is quite a lot. And that really increases the strain on your retirement portfolio. To put this theoretical issue to rest, you have to just think about it like this. If you retire earlier and you don't know how long you're going to live, you're making a gamble with your future self that you cannot control. And therefore, you need to be extra certain that you can retire earlier, or you're going to have catastrophic effects later when you possibly run out of money while still alive. So I'm going to show here a couple steps to determine what the right retirement age is for you. We're going to do a simple model, and then I'll share the method that you can use to do a more sophisticated model. The way to think about this is you're trying to determine the right retirement age, and you want to give yourself some guidelines or guardrails. You want to kind of give yourself a track within which you can travel, so you know what your most conservative estimate needs to be and what your most optimistic estimate needs to be, and anywhere in between. And then you can make a well-informed decision about when to retire. And that is really the linchpin of high level or high probability retirement success, especially when it comes to something like Monte Carlo. So the first step in determining the appropriate retirement age for you, and we'll put this formula on the screen, is you need to understand what I call your RPI, your required portfolio income. Your required portfolio income is what will determine how long your assets will last and how long or at what age you can retire, because the length of your retirement determines what size of a portfolio you need. That, combined with the amount of income you need each year, determines that number. So we need to find out your required portfolio income. Very simple formula to find that. We need an estimate of your desired spending in retirement. Let's say $30,000 per year. Then we need an estimate of your guaranteed income in retirement. Guaranteed income sources are Social Security, pensions, and annuities. Let's assume, for the purpose of this illustration, that someone were to have $15,000 per year of guaranteed income sources that would last for the duration of their retirement. Now we can back out our required portfolio income, which is going to be the desired spending minus your guaranteed income, in this case, $30,000 minus $15,000. That leaves us with $15,000 of required portfolio income. Now, the next step is we need to say, well, what does this $15,000 necessitate of us? How much do we need in portfolio assets at the point at which we decide or would like to retire in order to support that $15,000 payment? Now, again, for the purpose of this video, to keep the principle simple, we're just going to assume it's a flat level $15,000 payment, that inflation doesn't exist, that costs don't go up. When you do a more sophisticated financial plan or retirement plan, you will obviously want to take into account inflation and other variables like that. But for the easy math here, we have this, what I call the general method, and then you have the precise method. So the general method is the flat level $15,000 payment. The precise method would be adjusting that for inflation, so you know at the point at which you retire what that inflated amount would be, and then you inflate it over the lifespan of your retirement. Now, what I want to do is on the screen here show you how we set up these guardrails. So let's assume that we use this general method, not the precise method, and you need this. Let's use $20,000 per year in required portfolio income. If you were to want to arrive at the day of your retirement with enough required portfolio income in order to survive 30 years of retirement in cash, you'd need a $600,000 cash bucket. Now, that would be what I would call the most conservative model. It would be your retirement asset ceiling. If you wanted to survive 30 years with flat level $20,000 per year payments, you need $600,000 of assets, and that will get you through the rest of your life. You will deplete it by the end of that 30 years, but you don't need any investment rate of return, no assumed rate of growth. That's the most conservative estimate. It's the asset ceiling. Now what we want to do is use maybe a retirement calculator or some other form of calculation here, and we'll create your most optimistic scenario, which would basically provide the smallest possible pool of assets you might require in order to then retire at the age you want to. So again, assuming we have a 30-year retirement, let's assume that you can get 6.5% on your money for the rest of your life, and then you still want this $20,000 per year payment. Well, if you had a 30-year retirement, you would need something like $265,000 at the day you retire. If you could continue to guarantee that you'd get 6.5% rate of return every year compounded, you would be able to retire and take $20,000 per year in payments. You deplete that asset fully, that pool of assets fully by the end of the 30 years, and that gives you what I would call your retirement pool floor. It's the smallest amount that you could retire with. Now, in this video, it's not advice. It's just the idea. You have to come up with what that number would be for you, but you can get away with smaller dollar amounts if you invest. You need larger dollar amounts if you leave it in cash. And then what you're trying to do with prudent retirement planning is find the tolerances in between. Wrap this video up. So let's say, what are your 3 options with this knowledge? Okay. So let's say you do this math and you look at what you actually have in retirement savings today. Let's say you're 62, you want to retire at 65. You don't know if that's possible. You do this math problem. You find out your required portfolio income, and then you do a flat general calculation to give you the most conservative amount of assets you need, and then you use a retirement calculator or a financial calculator, and you find out what the asset floor you would need, which is the most optimistic. Let's say you're of a conservative or moderate temperament, so you want to skew a little higher. So you're going somewhere in between that top number where you're all in cash and that bottom number where you're getting a guaranteed 6.5% rate of return. And you don't have enough assets right now, nor do you have enough savings time to make that up. Well, what are your options? There are really 3 options that move the needle. You can move your retirement date out further so you have more time to save if you're going to have enough wiggle room. The second item would be to increase your savings rate significantly if you're able to, if you don't have enough assets now or the projection doesn't show enough savings by the day of your desired retirement. You have to increase your savings substantially, or you need to spend less in retirement, or some combination of all 3. Now, if you haven't watched my other video from a couple weeks ago, there's one that we put up called The 3 Types of Retirement Plans, where we talked about the different types of retirement plans and the big movers that move people from 0% to 60% to 80% to 100% on a retirement plan. And I highly recommend watching that video. It talks a little bit more about these big movers and how you think about combining them based on your baseline scenario. So very rarely is someone going to start at 0%, but what we want to do is take an assessment of where someone is and then move them higher and higher on the retirement probability as a good trajectory or directional guide. So hopefully you found this helpful. This is how you would calculate when is a safe time to retire. You use required portfolio income combined with some kind of a formula to back out the amount or pool of assets that you'll require the day you retire. And then from there, you can make a prudent retirement timeline decision. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of other retirement planning actions that can and should be done that will also optimize and improve these probabilities, but the largest mover is going to be choosing an appropriate retirement date. As always, thank you for your time and attention watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions, please put them in the YouTube video comments below. You can always visit our website at www.thepeakfp.com to learn more about our financial planning activities. You can also find a whole bunch of helpful resources there, including sample financial plans, blog articles, and a whole bunch of calculators and tools. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.